Silence has a way of speaking louder than words. When someone ignores us, it isn't just the absence of sound. It feels like the absence of acknowledgement, the absence of validation, the absence of being seen. As human beings, we are wired to seek connection, so when that connection is withheld, it shakes us at the very core of our identity. Think about when a person refuses to respond, when messages go unanswered, when your presence is met with indifference. The mind doesn't just register the lack of response, it begins to fill the void with assumptions, doubts, and fears. We start to wonder if we matter, if we belong, if we are somehow not enough. The silence becomes a mirror reflecting back our insecurities. Science has shown that the pain of being ignored activates the same regions in the brain as physical pain. That's why rejection doesn't just feel emotional, it feels bodily. The sting in your chest, the heaviness in your stomach, the tension in your throat are not imagined, they are real signals of distress. Ignoring someone cuts deeper than an insult because at least an insult acknowledges our existence. What makes silence so unbearable is that it deprives us of resolution. When someone speaks harshly to us, we have something to respond to. But when someone ignores us, there's no dialogue, no closure, no explanation. It leaves us stranded in a space of uncertainty where we can't tell if the problem lies within them, within us, or somewhere in between. And here's the paradox: even though silence hurts more than conflict, many of us tolerate it longer. We wait for the message that never comes. We justify the absence with excuses. We convince ourselves to stay hopeful in situations that are already speaking volumes through their silence. In doing so, we often prolong our own suffering. To be ignored is not just to be rejected, it is to be erased. It tells us in the harshest way possible that our presence doesn't register in someone else's world. That erasure taps into one of our deepest fears as human beings. The fear of being invisible, the fear of not leaving a mark, the fear of being forgotten. Yet silence, while painful, is powerful precisely because of the questions it forces us to face. If being ignored questions our worth, then it pushes us to ask, who defines that worth? Is it truly in the hands of those who withhold their attention, or do we carry it within ourselves, waiting to be reclaimed? This is why the sting of silence is so unforgettable. It is not only about what someone else does to us, it's about what it awakens inside us. The doubts, the stories, and sometimes the truths we have been avoiding for too long. Rejection doesn't just bruise our feelings. It leaves an imprint on our biology. When someone ignores us, it isn't just a social slight. Our brain treats it as a survival threat. For thousands of years, belonging to a group meant safety, protection, and the chance to thrive. Being pushed out or disregarded meant danger. That ancient wiring hasn't disappeared. It lives on in the way we process silence today. When we are ignored, our brains react in the same way they would if we were physically hurt. Functional MRI scans reveal that the anterior cingulate cortex, the region responsible for processing physical pain, lights up when we feel social rejection. This is why a lack of acknowledgement doesn't just sting emotionally, it can actually ache in our body. The heaviness we feel isn't metaphorical, it's neurological. That wiring explains why being ignored feels so much harder to endure than we think it should. It's not just about one unanswered message or one cold shoulder. It's about our brain screaming that our place in the tribe is under threat. And for humans, there has never been a fear more primal than being cast out. This instinct runs deeper than logic. Even if we rationally know that one person's silence doesn't define our value, our biology doesn't always listen. The body reacts with tension, the heart races, stress hormones surge, and suddenly a simple lack of reply feels like a wound. It's the body remembering the ancient cost of disconnection. We often underestimate how much our survival instincts shape our relationships. From childhood, we are taught that attention means safety. When a caregiver responds, we live. When they don't, we panic. That early conditioning never truly leaves us. Every moment of being ignored in adulthood reactivates that old wiring, pulling us back to the fear of being unseen, unprotected, unwanted. That is why silence cuts deeper than disagreement. Conflict means someone is still engaging with us. Ignoring means we've been dismissed from the circle of importance. The body interprets it as exile. And exile, in evolutionary terms, was a death sentence. Our brains are still carrying the echoes of that ancient truth. What makes it worse is that rejection doesn't just activate pain, it reduces our ability to think clearly. When we feel excluded, our IQ temporarily drops, our problem-solving weakens, and our memory falters. The brain is so busy processing the hurt that it can't fully function elsewhere. This is why being ignored leaves us spiraling in confusion and doubt. Rejection hurts so much because it is not just emotional. It is survival playing out in real time. It is the brain reminding us of its deepest fear that we might be left outside, alone, unworthy of belonging. When someone ignores us, it is easy to place the spotlight entirely on them, their behavior, their reasons, their silence. But ignoring is never just about the other person. It's also about the story that silence reveals. Every unreturned call, every unanswered message, every dismissive glance becomes more than just an act. It becomes information. Silence is rarely neutral. It communicates something that words often try to disguise. When a person chooses not to engage, they are making a statement about their priorities, their values, or the role they see us playing in their world. That absence of response is a presence in itself. It's a signal, and signals are meant to be read. Too often, we misinterpret silence as a reflection of our personal worth. We ask ourselves, what's wrong with me? But the hidden message is less about us and more about the connection itself. The silence may be saying that the relationship isn't balanced, that the energy we pour in is not being reciprocated. It may be highlighting an imbalance we have ignored for too long. Being ignored can serve as an unintended but powerful truth teller. It strips away illusions of closeness. It reveals who genuinely values the relationship and who engages only out of convenience. It's not just rejection, it's revelation, pointing to a dynamic that words might otherwise sugarcoat. Sometimes, the message in being ignored is that the other person does not have the capacity, willingness, or desire to meet us where we are. And while that realization hurts, it saves us from clinging to a connection that cannot sustain itself. Silence shines a light on whether a bond is built on mutual respect or one-sided effort. We tend to see silence as emptiness, but in reality, it is full of meaning. It is full of choices unspoken, decisions made quietly, and values acted upon without explanation. When someone ignores us, they are telling us something about how they see us, even if they never say it out loud. That message is often uncomfortable because it calls for confrontation, not necessarily with the other person, but with ourselves. It forces us to ask, what am I willing to accept in my relationships? What am I ignoring about being ignored? What truth is this silence urging me to see? The hidden message in being ignored is not an ending. It's a revelation waiting to be acknowledged. It is the relationship speaking louder than the individual, telling us more than words ever could. The questions we ask ourselves in moments of pain shape the meaning we attach to that pain. When someone ignores us, the natural instinct is to ask, why are they ignoring me? That question places us at the center of blame. It assumes we did something wrong, that we are flawed, that the silence is a direct measure of our inadequacy. But perspective changes everything. If instead of asking, why me, we ask, what does this show me? We shift from victimhood to insight. We stop spinning in self-doubt and begin uncovering patterns, truths, and lessons that the silence is revealing. It becomes less about punishment and more about clarity. Asking, what does this show me? Transforms silence into a lens. It might show us that we have been giving too much to someone who cannot or will not reciprocate. It might show us that our needs for respect and acknowledgement are not being met. It might show us that we've been avoiding a truth that's been quietly speaking all along. Perspective is not about denying the hurt, it's about reframing the meaning. Pain without perspective feels like chaos. Pain with perspective becomes information. The silence doesn't hurt less, but it stops being empty. It becomes purposeful, pointing us toward awareness rather than despair. This shift also returns control to us. When we ask, why are they ignoring me? The answer is entirely outside our hands. But when we ask, what does this show me? The answer leads us back to our own choices. It reminds us that while we can't control how others treat us, we can control what we learn, how we respond, and what we accept moving forward. Perspective is the difference between seeing silence as rejection and seeing it as redirection. It allows us to move from obsession over another person's absence to reflection on what their absence highlights in us. It creates space for growth rather than endless questioning. And perspective doesn't only reveal the truth about others, it reveals the truth about ourselves. It shows us where we place our worth, how much validation we demand externally, and how willing we are to adjust our boundaries. The silence reframed becomes less of a void and more of a mirror. The power of perspective is not in changing what happened, but in changing what it means. By asking a better question, we give the silence a purpose and ourselves a path forward. When someone ignores us, it can feel like a wall has been built between us and them. A wall that blocks communication, blocks understanding, and blocks connection. But what if silence isn't just a wall? What if it's also a mirror, reflecting back truths we might not otherwise see? Silence, as painful as it is, often reveals the difference between words and actions. Many people can talk, but not everyone can show up when it matters. Silence exposes who truly values your presence and who only values convenience. In that way, being ignored doesn't just close a door, it shines light on the nature of the relationship. Think of it this way. If someone's silence leaves you questioning your worth, the mirror isn't showing your inadequacy, it's showing their lack of investment. The reflection is less about what you lack and more about where they stand. Silence becomes evidence, not of your weakness, but of their priorities. A mirror forces honesty. It strips away excuses we might make for others. It reveals who notices when you step back and who doesn't. It shows who reaches out without being asked and who disappears when effort is required. Their silence is a reflection of their truth, even when they refuse to speak it out loud. This is why silence, though cruel, is clarifying. It can show us the people who were never really present even when they seemed close. It can show us the difference between those who only make noise and those who make time. It can show us that not everyone who talks to us actually values us. Seeing silence as a mirror also helps us see our own patterns. It reflects how much we are willing to tolerate, how deeply we crave validation, and how long we chase those who don't reciprocate. The mirror doesn't just show their truth, it shows ours. And once we see it, we can no longer pretend otherwise. The mirror doesn't lie. It doesn't soften or disguise. It forces us to confront the reality of who truly values us and who doesn't. It invites us to stop looking at silence as punishment and start seeing it as revelation. The silence that feels like rejection may, in fact, be the clearest reflection of who belongs in your circle, and who never did. Being ignored feels like loss. It feels like a door slammed shut, a connection slipping through your hands, a chapter ending without your consent. But hidden inside that painful silence is also an invitation, an opening to clarity that words often fail to provide. When someone ignores you, they create space whether you wanted it or not. At first, that space feels like emptiness. It feels like absence. But with time, that space can transform into breathing room, into perspective, into freedom from a connection that was already eroding. Silence removes the noise so the truth can finally be heard. That clarity is often uncomfortable, but it is necessary. It reveals who is genuinely invested and who is only holding a place in your life. The unanswered message, the overlooked call, the fading attention. Each act of silence points to where energy was being wasted, where love was not being matched, where presence was conditional. In that sense, being ignored is not just rejection, it's redirection. It clears space in your life for those who do see you, who do answer, who do care without hesitation. Sometimes, silence is the universe doing what you couldn't do yourself, removing what doesn't serve you so there's room for what does. Clarity also means seeing your own strength in the midst of absence. When someone ignores you, it forces you to notice who still stands beside you. It shifts your focus toward those who consistently show up, reminding you that care isn't about everyone. It's about the right ones. We spend so much energy holding on to people who won't hold on to us. Silence interrupts that pattern. It pushes us to ask, who am I overlooking while I'm chasing after someone who overlooks me? What love am I ignoring because I'm too focused on the silence of another? The clarity that silence brings is often harsh, but is also liberating. It frees us from illusions. It saves us from investing endlessly in people who are already telling us, through their inaction, that they cannot or will not reciprocate. It teaches us that absence is also communication. And when we accept that invitation to clarity, we stop seeing silence as the end and start seeing it as the clearing of space for what truly belongs. A discomfort has always been the birthplace of growth. And few discomforts cut as deeply as being ignored. The silence ones, it lingers. It forces us to face emotions we would rather avoid. Yet within that pain lies an opportunity, a chance to build resilience, to sharpen self-awareness, and to draw the boundaries that protect our well-being. Resilience is not built in moments of ease. It is forged in moments of fracture. Every time we survive the sting of being ignored, we prove to ourselves that rejection does not destroy us. We discover that we can withstand the ache of silence and still move forward. That realization becomes armor, not the kind that makes us hard, but the kind that makes us strong. Beyond resilience, silence pulls us inward. It demands reflection. When someone ignores us, it forces us to ask hard questions. Why does this hurt me so much? What does this reveal about how I see myself? What story am I telling about my worth that depends on their response? The self-awareness, though painful, is the beginning of transformation. Through that reflection, we learn where we've placed our value. If silence shakes us to our core, it might be because we've handed too much power over to external validation. The discomfort becomes a lesson, showing us that our worth cannot be contingent on the attention or the absence of another person. And with self-awareness comes the courage to set boundaries. Being ignored teaches us what we will no longer tolerate. It highlights the imbalance between what we give and what we receive. Out of the pain of silence grows the clarity to say, my time, my energy, my heart deserve better. Boundaries are not walls. They are doors we choose to close to protect what is precious. Growth through discomfort also deepens empathy. When we felt the sting of being overlooked, we become more attuned to those around us. We notice who is quiet, who feels unseen, who is silently hurting. Our own pain expands our capacity to ensure others don't feel invisible in our presence. The truth is, comfort rarely pushes us to evolve. It is discomfort that stretches us, that forces us to strengthen, that teaches us to let go of what diminishes us. Being ignored is one of the most uncomfortable experiences we can endure, but it carries within it the seed of resilience, awareness, and wisdom. What feels like a breaking point can, with time and reflection, become the very fuel that builds a stronger, more grounded version of who we are becoming. We often treat being ignored as a verdict, as if silence declares us unworthy, unimportant, undeserving of love or attention. But what if being ignored is not a sentence against us, but a sign for us, a sign pointing us toward where we do not belong, and by contrast, where we do? The silence of one person or even a group does not define our value, it defines their choice. And choices, while painful, are also directional. They show us who is capable of holding space for us and who is not. Their silence does not strip us of worth. It redirects us to seek worth where it will be honored. Sometimes the greatest gift of being ignored is clarity about where our energy no longer needs to be invested. It is the universe in its own ruthless way saying this door is closed, look elsewhere. What feels like rejection may actually be redirection, steering us toward people who see us fully, without hesitation or condition. Belonging has never been about fitting into every space. It has always been about finding the right space. Being ignored forces us to confront the truth that not every table is meant for us, not every circle is designed to hold us, not every person has the capacity to value what we bring. The pain of being ignored can cloud this truth at first. But if we step back, we see that silence as a filter. It removes what is false, temporary, or shallow, so that what remains is genuine. In this way, being ignored becomes less of an ending and more of a compass, pointing us toward where our presence is not just tolerated, but cherished. Think of the relationships that matter most in your life. They are not defined by who ignores you, but by who notices you. They are not defined by who leaves you in silence, but by who speaks your name with care. Silence then becomes a signpost, helping us distinguish between empty connections and meaningful ones. When we shift our perspective in this way, we stop interpreting silence as proof of inadequacy. Instead, we see it as guidance, sometimes harsh, sometimes painful, but always instructive. It is not a mark against our value, it is a mark against the alignment of the relationship. The ultimate sign hidden in being ignored is not rejection, but direction. A direction toward the people, places, and spaces where our worth is seen, celebrated, and never in question.